Lenovo is asking $849 for a tablet with an IPS screen and no fingerprint sensor. That's $300 more than the last generation and $300 more than the RedMagic Astra, which already gives you OLED, biometrics, and active cooling. So either Lenovo has completely lost the plot, or there's something inside this 8.8-inch slab that justifies that kind of markup. The US version ships as a bundle with a 68-watt fast charger, a folio case that doubles as a desk stand, and a screen protector. At this price, you'd expect that, but other competitors still charge extra for accessories, so I'll give them credit for that. It weighs 360 grams at 7.6 millimeters thin, which is light enough to hold one-handed for reading without your wrist filing a complaint. There's a 50-megapixel camera on the back with an RGB light ring, because nothing says serious gaming device like a glowing ring you can't see while you're actually using the tablet.
Nice.
The 8.8-inch 3K IPS display runs at 165 Hz with variable refresh rate, so games stay smooth and text stays sharp at any size. Lenovo's daylight boost pushes past 600 nits, and the colors punch above what you'd expect from an LCD in 2026. Dual speakers with Dolby Atmos get the job done, but they're not going to blow you away compared to what RedMagic offers. And you get dual USB-C ports, so you can charge while running a controller or outputting video at 4K 120 Hz to an external display with a full desktop mode that turns this thing into a pocket-sized PC. But the real question with any gaming tablet is whether the hardware backs up the price tag. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 is the fastest ARM chip available for Android right now, and what that means in practice is that there isn't a single native Android game that can stress this thing. In benchmarks, the Gen 5 scores about 18% higher on CPU and 15 to 25% higher on GPU compared to the first Gen Elite, which puts it comfortably ahead of anything else in this form factor. Fortnite runs maxed out at epic settings, 120 Hz, full resolution scale without dropping a frame. Call of Duty Mobile locks at 120 Hz like it's doing you a favor. Even Genshin Impact with the new 120 Hz support runs smooth, though longer sessions at Ultra will build heat, and you'll want to pull settings back to high at 60. The base model pairs that chip with 12 gigs of fast RAM and 256 gigs of storage, which to me doesn't seem enough, especially if you're loading up on games. But you do get a micro SD slot for up to 2 terabytes. And there's a 16 gig version with 512 if you need more headroom. I have to warn you about micro SD card slots. The speed has been painfully slow across every generation of this tablet, so use it for media, not games. But the thing that separates this tablet from every other Snapdragon flagship is what happens when you start pushing it further. GameCube and Wii games through Dolphin run at 4x resolution without breaking a sweat, which on a 3K display means retro games look better than they ever did on original hardware. PS2 emulation through NethersX2 hits 60 frames per second at 4x across titles like God of War 2 and Gran Turismo 4. And then there's the party trick. Through x86 emulation with GameHub, this tablet can actually emulate Cyberpunk 2077 locally. Not streamed, not cloud gaming, actually emulated at around 40 frames per second at 720p with frame generation. A full PC game on something the size of a paperback. The trade-off is thermals. Without active cooling, the chip hits thermal throttle during extended x86 sessions and performance starts pulling back. A clip-on cooler would help, but that's an extra purchase and extra bulk on a device you bought specifically because it was compact. But before you reach for your wallet, here's what Lenovo left out. Before that though, if you enjoyed the video so far, give it a like and subscribe, because every video on this channel shows you the gadgets actually worth your money. At $849, no OLED is a tough sell when competitors offer it for $300 less. I know some of you prefer IPS for long sessions because it's easier on the eyes, and I get that, but the pricing still doesn't match the panel. There's no fingerprint sensor, no face unlock, and no biometrics at all, so you're typing a pin every time you pick this thing up. In 2026, that's like buying a sports car with crank windows. The performance is there, but somebody clearly skipped a meeting. And there's no cellular connectivity, no SIM, no 5G, so you're tethering to your phone whenever you leave Wi-Fi. And all of that gets harder to swallow when you look at what $300 less already gets you. The RedMagic Astra launched at $549 with a 9.06-inch OLED screen, a Snapdragon 8 Elite 1st Gen, active cooling with a built-in fan, and a fingerprint sensor. What it doesn't have is a micro SD card slot or a charger in the box, so you're locked into whatever storage you buy and you're paying extra for a charger. On paper, the Legion Tab's bigger 9,000 mAh battery should crush the Astra's 8,200, but in actual gaming, both tablets land around 4 to 5 hours before you're reaching for the charger, because Lenovo's Gen 5 chip draws more power and the passive cooling creates extra thermal overhead. Where that bigger battery shows up is browsing and streaming, where the Legion Tab pulls ahead by a few hours. So if you're gaming, the battery difference is basically a wash. In benchmarks, the Legion Tab's Gen 5 chip scores about 18% higher on CPU and 15 to 25% higher on GPU compared to the first Gen Elite in the Astra. That sounds like a big deal, but in native Android gaming, both chips max out every single game at top settings. You won't notice the difference in Fortnite, Call of Duty, or Genshin. The gap only shows up in emulation, especially x86, where that extra headroom lets you push games like Cyberpunk a bit further. If emulation isn't your thing, the Astra's chip is more than enough. And the timing matters here, because the RedMagic Astra 2 is expected within weeks, or it's already out depending on when you're watching this video. Same Gen 5 chip, a 185Hz OLED, active liquid cooling, and a price around $550. If that lands as expected, it closes the performance gap entirely while keeping every advantage the Astra already had. So would I buy this? If you're deep into emulation and you need expandable storage for a library of ROMs, the Legion Tab Gen 5 is the only compact tablet that checks both boxes, and for that specific use case, it's worth the money. The included charger, case, and desktop mode sweeten the deal. But at $850 with an IPS screen, no fingerprint sensor, and a competitor about to drop the same chip with OLED for $300 less, Lenovo is asking flagship money for a mid-range experience. The smarter play is to wait for the Astra 2, and that's what I would do. Same firepower, better screen, better price. I already did a full breakdown of the RedMagic Astra and why it became the gaming tablet to beat, so if you want to see exactly what $300 less gets you, that video is right here.